don't want to say. I don't know which one it is. What do you think? You ain't saying nothing? Okay. I was just checking.
I'm to listen to you.
Well, and I said, when you heard that you could teach since it's your birthday this week. You turned how old?
76.
76. Can you believe that? Huh? If what?
Word play that song, 76 trombones, right?
Telling you. Don't know what Roger's gonna do. Does that mean you're over the hill?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. I didn't know. I was checking.
Well, no, I'm on the other side anyway.
Okay.
Over the hill where it was, man.
All right. Let's get the right screen up so we can do something.
I need the spot, didn't you?
Well, what did we do last week?
Sir?
I said, what'd you go over last week?
Complacency.
Oh,
Wait, no.
Lord, surely not.
Yep, that's
Surely.
what it was.
Okay. So, we will be reminded here for the moment that we're still in our wilderness place, and now it started snowing on us. We kind of got a bad time of year to be stuck in the wilderness because now it started snowing. So we're still out in the wilderness. We're still dealing with some things in the wilderness. And as Roger said, we talked about some complacency issues last week. Now, tonight, I'm going to go over some things that we're still dealing with in the wilderness. Might be a little bit deeper than what you may think or realizing some things, but tell me what you know about what you're seeing on the screen.
Are you brother?
Okay, some said a thumb, some said a finger.
Thumbprint.
What do you know about it?
Every one of them is different.
Except in identical twins.
Okay.
Yeah, I learned that on NCIS.
Source of identification.
Okay. Anything else you know about this?
Could be a maze.
Huh? Could be a maze. Now Tony's getting out of the box.
Yeah.
Way out.
So we know that. Now I'm pulling information from I've pulled this from our medical reference that we use in the ER, the physicians use. It's got another section in the back of that Tabor's medical encyclopedia. And so I pulled this information out of it for us to use tonight. And no two fingerprints are the same. Now, on the same person, even. You don't even have two fingerprints the same on your body. Now, in identical twins, like Jennifer was saying, there are very, very close similar patterns, and their printing schematics are almost the same. But somewhere, if they really dig into the microscopic part of it, there's changes in there, in the makeup of it. They are unique because of one reason. They do not change over time. That fingerprint that you've got will never, it's not going to change over time.
What
So-
if you rub it off?
Huh?
What if you rub it off?
But the print itself that was created when you were born, before you was born, but after you had been birthed, that print is the same exact diagnostic print all through life.
Okay.
Unless it's intentionally altered or destroyed, like a burn or something else, that print never changes. It can have raised edges, it can have sunken furrows, it can be, they've got three patterns in the medical field of a fingerprint, and they call it loops, whorls, and arches when they study a fingerprint. And then they look at each unique fingerprint. They can detect it by different chemicals. They can detect it by different equipment. They use it to identify things when they're looking into investigations. But one of the things that's interesting is that you use your fingerprint. You can do it right now. What's something you can do with your fingerprint? People do it all the time.
If you got an old iPhone, it's how you open your.
You can unlock your phone.
Oh, yeah.
Both my work phone and my phone both will do that. It will unlock by my fingerprint. Anything else? Anything else you know you can do with your fingerprint?
Open doors.
Open doors, that's one of them. Anything else? Other animals, there's some other animals. Koalas, gorillas, and other animals, even North American fishers, have unique prints of their own. There is an influence to your fingerprint, and it being by your paternal parent genes. So family members' fingerprints are similar in nature when they study or look into them in the patterns or whatever they have. So if we look at that and we say, okay, now this is specific DNA that can't be cloned, can't be copied, won't change any time in your life. There'll be nothing happen to this print. It's yours and yours only, and none of them on your body are even the same. Then tell me, how many different ways can we identify a body? So Tony went to her exercise class that she goes to, or used to go to, whatever you go to. Was it water aerobics?
Uh-huh.
Okay. She gets over there in the middle of an iceberg, freezing day, and goes to the pool for the water aerobics, and they find somebody laying outside. And nobody knows who it is. How many different ways could we identify this person?
Teeth,
Teeth? Okay.
Records, thumbprints, DNA.
Okay.
tattoos,
Okay. What else? Fingerprint. Okay. What else?
birthmarks.
Okay. What else?
If you've had any surgeries that like you have,
Scars.
or plate, or
Yeah. What about
you have serial numbers that are unique to you.
and this is comical to me when I teach classes in the medical field. Everybody does what we're doing right now in the room. When I ask them how we identify somebody or something, they all jump straight to these things of all this. But nobody backs up and just does the easiest thing you can do.
Look at it.
Huh?
Look at it.
Yeah, if they've got a medical alert bracelet on, it'll tell you their name, their birthday, and what problem they have if it's printed on it. Some of them do, some of them don't, but they at least have some information on it. Another thing is their wallet. You know how many people come into the hospital they're doing CPR on? And I know sometimes we never get the chance to check it. But do you know how many times car wrecks, all these other instances, they come in the door and the whole time they've had this person, their driver's license was in their pocket?
Yeah,
You know?
mine was in Colorado Sun Buzzer.
There you go. So, you know, backing up and checking these things, there's all these different things that we can look at to identify somebody, even if there's pictures of them on their phone or something else. There's different ways for us to identify somebody, even no matter what it is, that they can go back and identify. And like you all said, the dental records, the fingerprints, all these things that we looked into. Now, knowing this that we've got to so far, you tell me what is your wording to tell me what this word means?
Who you are?
Okay. Anything else? What does this word mean? Man, it got quiet. That cake must have been good.
It was.
It
That's
makes
pretty
the
much
sugar
it.
come up.
Huh? Put you in a sugar coma? Stay awake. So let's look at the definition of this word for just a moment. We go forward, just so we get a kind of a clear understanding of where this word sits. So the distinguishing character or personality of somebody, the relation established by psychological identification, the condition of being the same with something described or asserted, and then sameness of essential or generic character in different instances. If we look at this in its whole context, and we're in the wilderness, just remember we're in the wilderness tonight. We look at this as a concept that evolves over the course of a person's life. Now you think about that. Your identity evolves over the course of your entire life. It can involve things that are aspects that are completely out of your control, or it can be based off of choices that you made. One or the other It's all in there. And so there are a few things about your identity that people do and don't realize sometimes. And if we take first as an example, let me just give you some easy, quick examples. Your internal factors of your identity are known to be values, your beliefs, your interests, and your personality. Internal factors. If we look at your external factors, we'll see that it can include, based on your identity you identify to, family, friends, society, culture, race, ethnicity, location, and opportunities. Life experiences can also be involvement to your identity. Where you grew up, your education, and your profession. These things can have potential to be part of how you identify or make up what your identity is. Now this next one, y'all be careful, because I can't say whose picture this is, but be very careful with this one. But when you look at someone's appearance and self-expression, how you look and present yourself can impact how others perceive you. What are the biggest questions people get into when they deal with their identity is, and this is one of the biggest things, is what is the purpose of life? People ask themselves that question all the time. There's tons of people through life, different times in their life, different stages of life, will ask themselves the question of what is the purpose of life, or who am I? That's a big one that people ask themselves, is who am I? If you go on, you'll see in social identity, this is how people see you, and it can be influenced by their perception, attitude, values, or beliefs. And your self-identity is how you see yourself, and can be influenced by your values, beliefs, and perception of the world. All these things are factors that are constantly rolling as we live our lives, no matter what age you are. And Roger hitting a new milestone this week. He's really climbing up there. I mean, man, he's got way up there now. That's why he about pushed Lois off the other side in that walk. But you see this stuff and you think about it, the identity of things. Now, in the wilderness, we know that the Lord was there how long? 40 days. He's still been there 40 days. I'm glad you didn't change your answer from last week. But he was tempted in all ways. Tempted in all ways. Same as man is tempted now. And one of the biggest problems that we get into, and we see this a lot of times, right here, just right here. If we don't even go far, we can see it in the church, we can see it outside the church of everything. But we have a lot of people in the wilderness right now that are experiencing or dealing with something, and this is a good example of one thing that we refer to. Now look at this one. How many have ever heard of something known as an identity crisis?
Heard of it.
Anybody know what that is? A true identity crisis. You ever heard it? No? Some people hear it, some people don't. It's very common. This can happen when someone changes or some other change makes you reevaluate who you are. When something changes around you that makes you reevaluate who you are, and a theory about identifying identity crisis as a stage that a lot of adolescent teenagers go through this big time. This is a big thing that people go through and deal with as teenagers. It don't happen just during adolescence. It could be any time that you go under anything that's considered like a life transition, some type of situation or role. Even we call them a midlife crisis. You heard of that one? A midlife crisis.
I'm almost there.
Huh?
I'm almost there.
You're almost to the midlife crisis. Well, I'm glad you're getting close. So, one of the things I thought about that deals with this very issue is more common than you and I would ever probably think about or relieve. And I'm going to give you an example. Some of the identity crises that we deal with right now in America is our veterans. Returning to a civilian life from a soldier being deployed is a big problem. They have a big problem trying to go back to the civilian lifestyle after being overseas, deployed, in general, as far as the military. Major health problems really can form an issue in a midlife crisis or an identity crisis. Retirement for some people can be an issue as a big change. That's a big change, isn't it? To go from working
Yep.
how many hours a week to,
Oh, I still work.
I know, but not like you did at the factory, 6, 7 days a week, whatever. So those changes start affecting you, and some people get into what we're going to call in the identity crisis. There's a few simple questions that are very common amongst people that don't even realize that they are dealing with an identity crisis. I'm going to give you some questions to see tonight that's very common. The first one is questioning your basic understanding of who you are. How many people do you think knows who they are? What do you think? How many people honestly know who they are?
I'm Roger.
I know you're right. Some people ask, let me give you some examples so you kind of see where this is going. Some examples of questioning your basic understanding of who you are would be if you feel like you're a kind person. Are you an intelligent person? Are you an honest person? Those type of questions that you're asking is more of understanding of who you are. Whether you're easy to get along with, or whether you're conscientious in your work that you do. These signs show up questioning what matters to you most, and then you start questioning if you're passionate about the things that you were driving force in life. The things that used to drive you and motivate you in life, don't do it no more. That makes you reevaluate some things that define things about us. Feeling anxiety, agitation, or dissatisfaction with life. Some things can make you feel extremely uncomfortable. That's an easy example. And dealing with things that make you extremely uncomfortable makes people feel disturbed about the changes or the thoughts that they're having and experiencing and things that they feel anxious about. Changing yourself to suit any environment, situation, or relationship. How many people are, what's the lizard that changes colors?
Chameleon.
Yeah, you know, we got a lot of chameleon people with identity crisis because they blend wherever they're at. Don't they? They just, whatever crowd they can get into and fit in, they blend. They blend in. They just go right into it. The chameleon gets right in there and they blend because they change themselves to suit any environment, situation, or even relationship. Trouble answering questions about yourself. You know, do you find it hard to answer some things during all these things that come up and they ask, okay, a job interview. Job interview, they're going to ask you some things about your traits and characteristics. How many people do you think sit there and say, well, I really don't know? In a job interview. And you ask,
You better make something up.
yeah. I tell you what, now, and I've sat in on a lot of interviews, both for the college when they bring medic students in and the doctoral side, and I've sat in the hospital interviews and the people that I interview, and there's a lot of people, I'll ask them to give me 3 strengths and 1 weakness. And it takes them a minute to come up with 3 strengths and 1 weakness. Then I'll say, now tell me 3 character traits about yourself.
Obviously, you don't work in education.
No, it's
because
healthcare.
you're not allowed to call them weaknesses.
No, but no, that's not. Yes, areas for improvement.
Yes.
So you think about it seriously.
You don't say so.
They will sit and they'll sit there sometimes when I said, I just want to know 3 character traits about you. Or tell me 3 character traits that your friends would tell me about you. And a lot of them can't answer that question in an interview. A lot of them can't tell me. Not being able to trust that you can make good decisions. That's another problem with people dealing with an identity crisis. Now, people go through most of their lives, you seriously think about that people with a problem, addiction's one we use in this class, but people with any type of problem will go through most of their lives under the influence of something. How many people do you know that has went through most of their lives up to the point we're at today? If you're 30 years old, 50 years old, 100 years old, most of their lives up to today, they have spent under the influence. Because they normally start smoking at what age? Teenager. There we go. Now we're back to the identity age. And that's when it starts. And up from that time till now, if they have gotten away from an addiction or anything that they're under the influence of, they have spent most of their life up to today under the influence of that substance, whatever it was, whatever it is. And they've learned a few things. I'm going to tell you a few things they've learned about their identity. they can fit in with any crowd you put them people in. I'm telling you, they can fit in like you've never seen. I could probably put them in a room of millionaires and dress them up as one, and they could carry the conversation just as good as anybody. I could put them in a room of doctors, and until it come down to proving what they know, they could still hold it. They could lie their way as far as you want them to get out of whatever, because they have done it over and over and over. Why do people remain under the influence? What's the main reason they do that? Anybody?
Addiction.
Yeah. What's the main reason they do it?
Makes them feel good.
It takes away something else.
Pain.
They don't feel
Not
it.
necessarily pain.
They don't feel whatever.
Possibilities?
Be physical
Takes away what's going on in the real world.
Yeah, whatever they're facing that's real, it's gone. Whatever they do is their influence, their addiction, takes away whatever they're facing in life right now. Now that's the real hard part. How many people have been accused of doing this? What's the old saying?
He wears many hats.
Wears many hats. All right. In order to hide a problem that escapes you from finding your purpose in life, your identity, who you are, where you're supposed to be in life, what you're supposed to be doing, people find something as an outlet to get out of that, finding that answer. And the other way they do that is by doing a million other things, wearing as many hats as they can, and create false identities and personalities because they lose touch with reality. Now, you've seen people that have you not heard the purpose stated of, well, he is out of his mind. He is blowed out of his mind. Whatever he's on, he don't even know where he's at. That's their intent. That is the purpose of what they do. Anybody under the influence of something, that is where they're going with that in many, many ways. One big thing that we got a problem with our identity issues, everybody has this problem, is when you get told this very statement right here. Now, I'm going to ask this question. If you were to ask yourself some questions and you answered them, now let me give you an example. Am I a truthful person if I tell a lie? Ginger says no.
Was it just one?
Am I honest? Am I really an honest person? Do I know what my purpose is right now in my life? Do I know who I am? Who am I? When I go through those questions and I ask myself that question, what does that allow me to do? What's that allow me to do?
Self-checking.
Justify all the bad decisions you've ever made.
That, yeah. You get to make the answer for yourself. If you ask yourself the question, then you get to make the answer. Is that not right? So if I say, am I an honest person? And I say, well, yeah, I'm honest. Yeah. You are empowering yourself to create an identity of who you are out of your own conscious effort. Many people do this without any standard, without any guideline to go by or morals to go by. They do only from what they know, and that's it, only from what they know. But the biggest mistake we've got right now with people with this issue is they're doing this. Big problem. Big problem. And I'm going to show you why. If we go by our identity, and that's what we're talking about, we're in the wilderness tonight. If we start wandering all through the wilderness, wondering just who we are, what we're supposed to be doing with our lives, what we're supposed to be doing in our lives, where we're supposed to be in our lives, we can come to a very simple thing right here with this one verse that we know so very well. If you're truly born again, let me put it that way for a reason. If you are truly born again, and you are a new creature, you are now who God says you are. It don't matter what I think. It don't matter what anybody in this room thinks. If you are a new creature, then your identity in the Lord is who God says that you are. There's no asking myself anymore who I am, what I'm supposed to do in life. I'm not supposed to ask myself none of those questions. Because here we go back to the famous verse, the heart is deceitful
Of all things.
above all things. And how can you know it? You can't. Steve preached Sunday about hope that is seen is not hope. From the point of being regenerated and from the point of becoming a new creature, your identity is who God says you are. Now I pulled just some verses for you tonight to see some things about your identity and who you are. All right, let's go for an example here. Ephesians 1:5. The adoption of children by Jesus Christ to himself according to the good pleasure of his will. In the new identity completely changes our relationship with God, our families, just the same as it changes how you now look at the world. And we're going to look at that in just a second. Our new identity means that we have the same relationship with God that Christ has with God. What do you think about that? Your relationship with God is now the same relationship with God as Christ. Because why? Why is that?
We're in Christ.
We are his children. You have been adopted as a son. And we are to call him what?
Father.
Father. Thank you. The Father. Now, if I get to call him Father, and you get to call him Father, then you adopted in are in the same relationship with him. This new identity that we now identify with him is Father. Instead of fearing God as your judge, you have the privilege of coming to him as the
Son.
yes, as a son, and you acknowledge him as Father. As many as received him, to them he gave power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor the will of the flesh, nor the will of the man, but of God. Your core identity is that God chose you. We didn't choose God.
No.
He chose us. He already knew everything about you. So your identity's done created. Whether you model it or not, your identity's done been created. He done knew everything about you. And even what you don't like to admit about yourself, he still chose you. Still knows. In the identity. And if we look at it even from a standard of things in our life, our identity, and this is a good example. Sports all go by based off of statistics about a player. And what are the statistics telling us?
Who he is.
We're identifying him to be good at what he does based off of what? What are we basing off of? His performance. How good he performs is how much you're determining his identity. And you'll hear that sometimes. Oh, he's a heck of a player. Man, he can run down that court. He can run that field like nothing. Well, you're basing that identity off of his performance. Luckily and thankfully for all of us, our identity that the Lord identifies us by is not based off of performance,
Amen.
or we would be in a lot of trouble.
Amen.
Now, if you look at everything, and I just pulled some verses here as we keep going for a minute. Ephesians 3:11. Let me give you this one. This is a very common verse. We have a very deep longing for self-awareness. People want to be self-aware. If they do something that they didn't mean to do, or they did something wrong, they want to be aware of it. But that's pretty much what makes us all human. And we don't, we look at our purpose and wonder who we are and all this. But here's what's interesting about this verse. Who is he in this verse?
God.
Okay. Hath made everything beautiful in his time, and he has set the world where?
In their heart.
He's already set the wonder of who you are who you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to be at, how you're supposed to do it. He's done set it in your heart. That's where it's at. Your identity, your purpose, everything that you're wanting to, people long and look for in life, has done been made and put in a place where you search. God searches what? The heart. Where your identity lies, where your purpose, where who you are. It don't come from asking yourself up here, because this up here is going to lie to you.
Yep.
You're going to be a liar to yourself, and then you're deceived, and then there we go. All these things keep popping up and looking at us. Look at what David wrote in Psalm 139. This is even an example. In Psalm 139, let me find mine because I flipped mine the wrong way, I believe. Yeah. This example right here of these verses: Thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. My substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret, and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. God formed you, and he knows you. Everybody agree with that? God formed you, and he knows you. And in turning to him, we can discover who he has designed us to be. I looked up the other day that we've got over 7 billion people in the world. Can you even count that high? 7 billion people in the world. And there's not 2 fingerprints alike. And God knows every one of them. Why? How does he know that?
All knowing.
Yeah, but how does he know that?
He might create
He made it. He made it. He knows it.
So if
Therefore,
somebody tells you you're 1 in a million, you're really 1 in 7,000.
7 billion. 7 billion. Just tell them you're 1 in 7 billion. But all them people on the planet, there's not 2 fingerprints alike. And every single one of us is made in one image. One image. Over 7 billion. And there's not 2 of them prints alike. But every one is made in his image. And despite what we do, rebellion, wandering, whatever we do, does it change anything about the love and pursuing of God? None. None. That's got a lot to say about what your identity is. If a person runs out, and I thought about this at church, well, let's use the church example. If we had somebody run in the door here during church service and come in and says, "Oh, I'm a cocaine addict and I just did something 5 minutes ago," how would that change people's perspective of that person if he was standing up front wearing a suit and tie? You don't expect a suit and tie, do you? Well, the dealer's got to look nice. I mean, that's serious truth. He's got to look. He's the best. He's got to get the trick of the trade. But if he comes in here and says, "I'm a drug addict and I'm in active addiction," or "I'm an alcoholic, I just drugged some on the way here and I drove all the way over here from Jonesville. I followed them 2 boys over there." But you seriously think about that. You've just identified him as a drunk or an alcoholic because he told you that, right? Or he said whatever, and you've now identified him that way. No matter what you know or don't know, you went with it. You took that to be. Some people will be hesitant and kind of want to feel that out and see if there's other evidence or something. But you think about it. People are going to run with these things and look at them very things to identify them. Now, we look at John 15. Here's another example. If we had any contractor words to use, this is for Roger and Robert tonight. If we had any contractor words to use about the connection, about our identity with the Lord and who we are in John 15, what is conduit used for?
It's more electrical, it's in electrical.
I'm going your route. Just hang with me. But what do we put conduit for? What's the purpose in it?
To run electrical wires, to protect the electrical wire from damage.
To go through.
Yeah,
They go through the conduit
yeah.
to get to the other place,
Yeah.
right? The source goes through the conduit to get to the other point of the connection. And in the part that the Lord even says, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman, and I am the vine, and ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me you can do nothing. Now this is why I thought of this the other day. If I run conduit, for those of you who know anything about electricity, and I run just a piece of wire through a conduit pipe, is there any more power at one end versus the other? None. The breaker box supplies you with the juice, but the same amount of power coming out is going to be on the other end. All the way through, your identity is presented to you, already formed from the Lord that knows you. And you are no less any of the person that God designed you to be, where you're at in your life right now, than you were when you were created. However, the connection problem is what's running through the conduit. What's going through that conduit pipe to get to you is where we get into the vine. And all things in Romans 15, Christ also received us to the glory of God. You've been accepted. People in identity crisis runs to try to just fit into whatever crowd they can get in, no matter what that makes them do or change, no matter what that type of person makes them be. They'll try to fit in with any crowd they can when they don't really know who they are, what they are, or their purpose. But you've done been accepted into this one, into this group. You don't have to fit in. You was made a new creature. You was done made into this. From that point on, you are already accepted into this. Galatians 3. He clears up right here that Rick and Tony don't have to become Greek or Jews, nor bond nor free, nor male or female. For ye are what? All one. You've been made one with all who are in Christ Jesus. And in Ephesians, we are named as his workmanship. What does that mean? What is a workmanship?
Working for him.
Okay, but what does that mean? No, we are his workmanship. Okay, I got the potter on the wheel. Yeah. What else? If you build this big elaborate house with all these real intricate whatevers in it and carpentry work and all that, that is your workmanship, is it not? So for us to be his workmanship, we are the image of his creation. We are in his image that we were made alike. And now, that tells me, if you're proud to show it off, that this is one of my great works I've done, then there's value in what God sees in us. If Robert and Roger says to somebody that wants to build a house, well, let us take you and show you one we've built, and they go and show them a house they built that they're proud of what they've done, it's valuable to them to show that. If you are his workmanship, then he is, or you are valuable to him. As other parts of the Bible even talks about being God's masterpiece. Out of anything that he made on this earth, you're it. We are one masterpiece, the workmanship of the Lord. And we can do everything that he's planned for us to do. We can be every bit of the person that he planned for us to be. We can be everything in life that God had purposed for us when we were created. And we're not turned into random lumps of clay. What do they do with the random lumps of clay? What do you do when you get lumps of clay in the wheel and it starts going around? You get a lump of clay in the wheel. What happens?
Mold it,
Huh?
mold it into something.
It's got to be changed and reformed. Every time that you and I have something happen and we get lumpy and we start getting out of shape because we're not really quite in where we want to be, what does God have to do with us? Put us back into the shape that he intended for us to be in. I'll give you another verse in John 15. And this one I like. This one's a good one. Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his Lord doeth. But I have called you what? Friends. For all things that I have heard of my Father, I have made known unto you. Not only is there not an issue of fitting in the identity of being one of God's chosen few, you are also called friends. Straight in the Bible. friends. How many people try to fit in the places in their life in the world? Co-workers, workplaces. You see that, Roger, at the factories. That people try to get in there and make friends with their co-workers or fit in. This is set up and designed. You don't even have to do that. It's not even made to be like that and to where you have to do that. And you look at this one, very common, Matthew 5. If we want to look at our purpose in life, our goals in life, our identity of who we are, where we're at, the Lord says that you are the salt of the earth. And if you've lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It's good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under foot of men. If you don't live in the image of the Lord and do His purpose for life, what purpose do you have? Anybody got a good one for me that will beat that? No? You're the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hid, neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel or on a candlestick and give it light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Who you are should be specifically delivered from the Lord. And then, who is supposed to shine the light?
We are.
You're the light of the world. You are. Your identity of what people see and who they know you to be should be shining straight out of heaven. We see people all. How many people do you go to Walmart and you can tell they go to church? I don't see any sometimes. I mean, you just think about it. And I mean, we do identify people by what we see. You know, if you come in with your face covered, we'll think you're a Muslim, right? If you got long hair, long skirt, long sleeves, you're what? Holiness. We've identified you.
Yep.
You're now holiness. It don't mean they just might not like wearing them clothes. If you wear overalls, we assume it's a what?
Hillbilly.
Hillbilly or a farmer. All right, we're identifying people right off. But if I see any of you in Walmart, how do I know you go to church or you're a Christian? How do I know that?
By the way you interact with people.
Okay. What else?
By the word.
Okay. What else? Anything else you can think of?
Let their light shine.
Huh?
Let their light shine.
Yeah.
with others.
You know, the Bible says you're supposed to be a doer and not a hearer only. So that don't mean that you get to go to church and hear the preacher preach and go out and do nothing. Well, that's bad, ain't it? I mean, that's just really made it bad right there, didn't it? Our identities just got shot. But you think about how the world sees you is what they identify you with. The crowd they see you running with, that's who you are. Where they see you at, that's who you are. How they see you act, that's who you are. They've identified you. All through your days, if Roger over here's mad slinging cabinet doors on the truck, compartment doors, because he can't find his tool, and the whole time it was up, and it was up and under the floor truss where he was plumbing. If they see that, just that 5-minute spiel of anger because he can't find his tool, what are they going to say? That man's mad. He is a mad. I would not be around him. And when they say, well, you should come here and teach Sunday school. But seriously, you think about how much you identify people just based off these simple things that don't tell us nothing, don't tell us anything. Their hair color and the length of their hair don't tell me a thing about them. There are some people in this area that are not holiness that have long hair and wear skirts and long sleeves. There's some older people that do that now that you and I would assume if we didn't know them are holiness, and they're not. Here's an example of one thing, and I read this in a thing that I had the other day that I was reading on about some things that are going on with church youth groups. Now this is interesting, and I pulled it when I was studying on this, and this was an article that was made by a large area of churches amongst that had youth groups in it, and this is one of the things that they mentioned in their article. The lists of who you are statements are filled with deep truth, but often little substance. You are loved, but those words hardly make any dent in love-hungry hearts if they don't understand who loves them. You are chosen, but chosen by who? Why were you chosen? You are redeemed. But those words may mean nothing if we don't deeply comprehend what we're redeemed from and the greatness of our Redeemer's heart. Far too often we open with the you are, we are, I am story instead of the he is story. And when we look at reflection of our identity tonight, and in the wilderness, in the world that we're living in today, we have got a lot of problems with people not knowing who they are. Can't tell you. They can't tell you what their purpose in life is. How many young people right now in school, high school, let's use a high school. How many people in a high school right now can tell us who they are and their purpose in life? Does Jennifer taught high school, she teaches in schools. How many people plans to be whatever when they get out of school do it? Do you ever hear a number, a statistical ratio? I'm gonna be an airline pilot, I'm gonna be a doctor, I'm gonna be
But
what?
most college freshmen change, their majors change.
The first year.
So it's less than 10%.
It's very low, very low. I went to school with people. I got a guy I went to school with, good friends with, and me and him went to school through medical school when I did in 2006. He's a pilot for Delta Airlines. They didn't teach me nothing about flying a plane. Nothing in my class that we went through with him taught us how to fly a plane.
It's not been 8 degrees.
Yeah, the professional student. She still don't know.
I'm starting in January.
So, point being,
I'll be on number 9.
there you go. Point being that, we change. This does change. Your identity and who you see yourself as and who you think you are and where you want to be in life, it changes the entire lifespan. It's always evolving. But a lot of that is affected by you and what you see, what you hear, what you do, how you learn. And if you're asking yourself the questions, stop. I remember one time I filled in for a pastor in Middlesboro at a church service, and this woman come up to me and she said, "Do you know if I'm saved?" I said, "Absolutely not." And she looked at me with this horrid face. Now we're on the altar in the middle of a church service, and she asked me if I know if she's saved. I said, "Absolutely not." And she looks at me real funny, and I said, "Are you saved?" And she said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, that's not a good enough answer. So until you can change that, as far as I'm concerned, you're not. If you don't know, I don't know. We ain't gonna get nowhere here." But over time with her in that church service, and later after talking to her, she went through a lot of things that I realized that her confusion that she gathered was from the people around her. Because the people around her was trying to tell her what the Bible said. She didn't know the truth. And I said, "So we're not going to discuss it, you're going to read it. You're going to read it for yourself and know that's exactly what it says." But when you try to ask yourself, am I really saved? Now let's go to the church identity problem. Am I really saved? Do you know how many people sit in a church house that probably can't answer that real solid? It's a maybe, or I think so, or I'm pretty sure. It is, ain't it? How many of them people would you really think, if you knew that, if they got to stand up in church and just said, "I think I am. Now I may not be, but I'm pretty sure I am." What's your identity on them?
They're not saved.
Immediately, you've identified them as a lost person,
Uh-huh.
just based off of what they said. Is that not true?
Mm-hmm.
That's what the world does with us all day long. If they hear no Bible, then you have none. If they see no Bible, you are none. If they see no Jesus, he ain't there. That's all day long in identity in the wilderness. How much more do you think the devil could deal with us and trick with us, because he don't see enough of it to be fighting us more with it, because we know it.
But what about the prodigal son? Because, he was with his father, and he was
Uh-huh.
doing what he was supposed to, and
Mhm.
then he just got to where he didn't want to.
Well, he decided to go try out his own life
Yeah, but
in another place.
He was still the father's son.
Mm-hmm.
He just wasn't doing what he was supposed to at the time.
So he took his inheritance and he blew it. What's your identity to that?
But he was still that father's son.
He was. But he went
Just
out.
because he was wandering and living life wrong at the time.
Mm-hmm. But the identity to him was at that very time, and that's what we go by, is what we see. And honest to God, that's what we go by, what we see, what we hear. That's how we identify a lot of things. Running with his inheritance till he eats with the pigs and eats the corn husks, and he finally decides, this ain't where I'm supposed to be in life. This ain't who I am. This ain't who I was purposed to be. What did he have to do then? What was his only choice?
Return home.
Come back home. To reconcile. There had to be reconciliation when he came home, and his father welcomed him back with what?
Open Lord.
Open arms. Until kill the fatted calf. You think about that all through our time and our identity crisis. We got a lot of people in church, honest to God, same thing. They go out into the world for a while. Or what's the word we use for that?
Excellent.
Backslide. They go out into the world for a while and live it up and do what they choose to do. That's not who God identified them to be. That's not their identity in Him. That's not what their purpose is in life and how they're supposed to be doing. They're free-willed agents. They can do it. Are they not? They can make their own choice. Nothing's forced. They can do that. But God's honest truth is that's not their identity. They're living outside of what they were created to be. And how much more altered image can you get when you try to live it on your own with no knowledge of what's to come, what you're going to face in life, what you're going to be dealing with in life, and here you're sitting out in the pond just like a duck in your own little water. Everything we do in our identity, and we deal with that all through life, but everything we do in our identity crisis of asking ourselves goes back to the simple theory that all your hope is found where?
In Christ.
All your faith is where?
In Christ.
Okay, so hope and faith is there. What else is there? Your salvation. Eternal salvation. Everything you've got is in the Lord. I'd stop asking myself some questions. What better of a way would it be to have a counseling session than to ask the Lord just exactly who I am and let Him tell me? He made me. He created me out of His own image. He knows me better than I do. That's hard to even fathom in my brain, but He does. Why would I ask myself something that He already knows? Why would I try to comprehend something in my own mind that He can already tell me? That's where our problem with an identity crisis is there's not something known as God discovery. People do not try to discover who God is. I can't remember the Hebrew Greek word about His image, that we're creating His image in the Greek word in Genesis that it talks about. But if you're created in the image of something, you're done identified. Your identity has done been made. It's the same as if you are an Indian tribe and they put that, whatever that thing is they put on them, or some have a dot if they're married, but there's an Indian tribe, they tattoo a marking or they do the earrings on it. They're identified as part of that tribe. You've done been identified and adopted into the body of Christ. Why would we try to figure out who we are? But we do it, don't we? People wonder every day, and I've asked some people at work and around, friends-wise, I've asked them some of these questions before I came tonight, and most of them that I work with aren't in church, and they can't tell me. What's your purpose in life? Well, they'll give me some type of generic, non-relative answer, or who are you? There's nothing they can tell me. They have no answer. The world has nothing to give them a true identity. There is no true identity in them because they have nothing to go off of. Anybody else got anything tonight?
Talk about the prodigal son. The Bible says that he was lost and now he's found.
Right.
Identifying him as lost.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you say, well, he's with the Father, just like this Acts, he says that they should seek the Lord if haply they might feel after him and find him, though he be not far from every one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said, we are also his offspring.
Yeah.
We're all made in the image of God.
Yeah.
And like I say, the left his father, he was lost.
Yeah.
He didn't say that he was backsliding.
Mm-hmm.
He was lost.
Lost.
Now
Mhm.
he's found. He was dead, and now he's alive.
Alive. Mm-hmm.
We're all the offspring of God. We're all created in the image of God. And that's the whole point. Man failed with his free will, and we become separated from God.
Mm-hmm.
We become lost.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Anybody else got
Before
something?
he could make back to the Father, he had to realize
He had to come to that
What it was.
knowledge that he
Wasn't where he's supposed to be, nor where he really wanted to
the
be.
Bible says he came to himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
came to that knowledge that his father, from which he had left,
Mm-hmm.
had servants that was well clothed and fed. He died of hunger. Like the Bible says, the lost are not going to be dead, but they're dead already.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't really realize that they're walking around, even though they got the world by the tail, they're not even full.
They're a dead man walking. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
They realized he had nothing, and that, I know that's a story that used literal things to show spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
It's really all that is, and it's realizing that he didn't have anything without the Father, without God. And that's when we become lost, we realize we have nothing. We have nothing. There's nothing to sustain us. We don't have any life without him. There's nothing that we have without Jesus.
That's right.
There's nothing out in the world or out in sin can bring the peace that only God can give.
Nothing.
And sinners, that's what they're not. They never are at peace. They're never at joy. They can't get that because it can only come from God.
They're looking for it.
Yeah, they're looking for it, and all the things like I say, addictions, and everything, pleasures, for a season, but it don't bring no satisfaction.
He did too, and it ended up a husk.
I mean, it's all
And it's all gone.
Right.
no friends.
That's honestly, some people learn who they really are when they realize they're not where they're supposed to be. You think about that in the life in the world. I know people that's left good paying jobs because they realized that was not what they were supposed to be doing. A person recently in the last few weeks here in the area went and applied for a welding job. And I asked him, I said, well, I didn't know you weld. He said, I don't. And I said, well, you just said you applied for a welding. He said, I'm interviewing tomorrow. I said, well, what are you going to tell him? He said, well, I learned a few things in auto body class in high school. I thought, well, that's 20 years ago. It's like that. And I said, you've never welded? He said, no, other than that class, I've not. And I said, well, but you've applied for a job as a welder? He said, yes. He said, and that's what I'm identifying as. That's what he told me, real serious. And I said, well, what are you going to tell them when they ask you about experience? He said, it's all trainable. I'm going to get in there and they can train me. But that's how a lot of people walk in life, don't they? They walk in life the same way. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out.
That's what a lot of people want to.
To what?
Someone they can train the way they want to.
They do. They do. The world wants that. The devil wants that.
But it's skilled labor, you can't.
Can't do it. It's not going to be good.
Because in construction.
And this was going to be in a trailer issue, so this is going to be going down the road.
Yeah, in construction work, you want to
Skilled.
hire somebody that
With experience.
knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
No, job skills are trainable.
Yeah, but when you're.
The type of person you are is not trainable.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have integrity? Are you on time?
Mm-hmm.
Those things are not trainable.
You can't teach experience overnight.
No. No.
No, but you
I know what
can't- you
you're
can't
saying.
teach to be
Things
good.
are trainable, but you don't.
When you're building a house and they come and they say they ain't got no experience, you say, okay, I'll hire you on this no experience, but they don't want that. They say they're experienced and you want to see it out of them because it'll just work you twice as hard if they're not experienced in
Oh,
what
yeah.
you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It'll make you back up and you'll lose more time, you'll lose more
Mhm.
construction work and you can't handle
It'll
it.
cost you.
Yeah, but what happens if you hire somebody that's got 10, 15, 20 years of experience and they won't show up on time, they call in those days? That's gonna cost you more in the long run too.
Let them go.
Instead of getting this
Just let 'em
person that's
go.
on time, and you train them to do the job and they're gonna be there.
the identity problem we've got a lot, and it starts from a younger age. That's the same as a drug addiction that people were brought into from a home situation. Now I'm going to use an example here. We've got people in the church that have people, even some that are like maybe 20 years old right now, that they were raised in a home that had active drug dealing or addiction, and that's what they went to do it. They identified themselves as that because that's what they knew. Well, if all you teach, if all people learn is what they see out of you and that's what you're teaching, then that's the identity they get. That's what they fit into. They blend. And people blend too easily sometimes with the church people. There's nobody you have to give an answer to about who you are. And now think about this. There's nobody you have to answer to about who you are other than the Lord, in the essence of saying that you know it. In the essence of saying you know it. There's nobody, because we have no other essence to go by. The world, if you get in and fit in with the crowd and they don't want you tomorrow, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
You're gone. You know, all these things prove themselves. It's destructive. There is nothing else destructive, and there's no truth. And what the world you try to get in and fit into and you try to identify as, there's no truth in that in the world. And a little bit later known, it fails. It all will end and cease. It fails. But our identity problems that we're seeing in a lot of younger people, adolescents and up, and even adults today, an example was in that thing about the youth group study was that they had some adults in that one of the churches that are still working at a place they've worked at since they were 14 years old, and they were complaining that they weren't getting any other type of career path or work or whatever, and they asked them, said, well, what do you identify as? And when they told them it was the very thing they started at 30 years ago when they went into it, wasn't a trade or a career path, it was just something they done, but they couldn't tell you anything else. They couldn't answer to anything about who they are, why they're here, what their purpose is, anything. And the identity issue with that in our young people is, if they are not in a God discovery effort, meaning to learn who He is, what He is, because that's exactly what we are, and if they don't learn that discovery, if that's not what they're being taught, they won't be able to walk up and answer to nobody who they are and what their purpose is in life.
But does people really, truly, and honestly see themselves as they really are? That's the thing, because people want to see themselves as being this person when they're convincing themselves that there's something that they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Because other people see them completely different. You know, I actually got a friend that the way she describes herself is not the way that I see her because of her actions and who she truly is. So how many people are truly deceived with that?
That's because they're asking themselves.
Yeah, but you're talking about if teenagers and stuff aren't in a God discovery mode, speaking as a classroom teacher to teenagers, they're not in any kind of discovery mode. They're just waiting on you to tell them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's it. And that's where if they're not being taught and told the truth, they don't know. That's it.
They're not getting the Lord at home.
No.
Well, how many households sit around and discuss that stuff? Because, you know, you got 3 or 4 kids, they all play sport,
Mhm.
running here, there. I mean, how many of them really sit down and with their parents and talk about that stuff?
Less than 1%. I'd say more.
Well, anywhere you go, you've got parents on their cell phones. They're not even interacting or talking with their children anymore. So these kids are being taught by Facebook and games and, you know, the internet, TV. I mean, and parents ain't even monitoring what their kids are even doing at this point. That's why we've got a heathen nation going on right now.
How many of y'all knew when it was time to come eat? When you were growing up, if you was outside playing, how many of you knew when it was time to come eat?
When I got hungry.
My mom would holler.
What time to be there?
When
Or
I
they
got-
rang a bell or come out on the porch and yell because you was outside or whatever.
Yeah.
They run
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, what happened when you didn't go?
them.
Families just started.
You didn't eat. That's it. But it happened. And it was going to be. true existing thing in life, and that in that example that Jennifer's talking about, that's where they have failed their covenant with God. Or we can even go to the church covenant and say that they have agreed to follow in practice of secret and family devotion.
Right?
It's quoted.
We're the religiously educated children.
That's it. It's right in writing. They've agreed to that. Now who's the failure? If you don't bring them to church, where's the failure? Who is responsible for the younger one in their home under their roof? They don't make decisions for themselves. Shouldn't be. So that puts all the weight on the responsibility of the parent. If you let your kid go do something else other than being at church on Sunday morning, who's that on?
Parents.
All day long. We have relaxed it to where people have started identifying that that's okay. But this right here is the same print that we had in 1611.
Yeah, but that happens in schools too.
Everywhere.
Parents say,
Everywhere.
well, I can't do anything with them.
Yeah.
I can't help it that they miss 4 days out of 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's everywhere. But a lot of our identity problem, younger people even up, is they don't know. They do not know. And that's where they're lacking. And then if you ask yourself, if they ask themselves the question, they're free to answer it however they want. Whether it's the truth or not, they can answer it and say whatever they want to and believe it. Thus be why that we are not to be self-minded, but he says we are to be thus like-minded. To who? In all of his image. Anybody else got anything to add to that?
It's unreal though, how the modern day way of looking at it is to try to teach your child the right way, moral way, and Christian way is brainwashing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's unreal how much it's flipped. It used to be a good thing to teach your kid, even in school, the Ten Commandments.
Mm-hmm.
I probably had six students last school year that could quote the Bible,
Any of it. Yeah.
that read it regularly.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That's the falling away. A lot of that's falling away.
6, that's a small number of them teach. 6 classes a day.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Anybody else got anything to know?